Do you despise me right from the start? I understand your mindset. You hear my tale and instantly feel repulsed. A privileged princess, thriving on social media fame, squandering money recklessly, and having the audacity to drain her sister's savings for an extravagant wedding. Horrifying, right? You perceive me as a dreadful human being. A sluggish, reliant, avaricious leech. A social media puppet with no intellect, wrapped in luxury brands, striking poses for meager advertising revenue. You can envision me giggling, brazenly spending money I never earned through honest work. You're certain I'm someone who possesses everything yet remains perpetually unsatisfied. And if the narrative concluded here, I would loathe myself as well. But there's more to the story. You don't truly know me. I grew up in a middle-class household in suburban New York. Neither impoverished nor affluent. My parents ensured I was fed, but they constantly reminded me of one fact. I existed in Juanita's shadow. My sister was the family's crown jewel, an unreachable beacon of excellence. Juanita was exceptional. Juanita secured an Ivy League scholarship. Juanita rose to become a successful CEO. Our household mantra was, "Your sister accomplishes this, why can't you?" Every praise my mother bestowed upon her felt like a dagger in my heart. Each of her achievements only reinforced my perceived inadequacy. I couldn't match Juanita's intelligence. But I possessed something she lacked, the ability to captivate. I was attractive. I understood fashion. I knew how to command attention. So I crafted a life where I was the focal point, a social media influencer, an Instagram celebrity. I didn't require Juanita's brilliance. I just needed acknowledgement, yearning, appreciation. Yet notoriety comes at a price. High-end fashion, sophisticated dining, lavish getaways, none of these are complimentary. And when Franklin, the man who captured my heart, proposed with a dazzling diamond, I yearned for a wedding that would be unforgettable. A celebration that would inspire worldwide envy. The dilemma was, I lacked financial means. But Juanita had plenty. I didn't commit theft. I merely claimed what I believed was rightfully mine. Guilt and remorse were absent. Juanita had it all. I simply desired, just once, to feel extraordinary too. So, does your hatred persist? Or are you curious to learn more? Juanita was always remarkable. No, to be exact, she was overwhelmingly remarkable. She functioned like a flawlessly engineered system, everything methodical, rational, perfectly aligned. During childhood, Juanita's walls showcased countless best student accolades. And I was merely the attractive but worthless child in everyone's perspective. My parents didn't harbor hatred towards me. Yet, their undisguised preference for Juanita was painfully evident. Throughout my childhood, I was tormented by one recurring question that haunted my existence. Why can't you measure up to your sister? They yearned for me to match Juanita's mathematical prowess, but numbers left me cold and confused. They hoped I'd secure admission to an elite institution like Juanita, but my SAT scores weren't even sufficient to warrant an application. They desperately wanted me to become somebody, yet they never bothered to define what that meant if that somebody was simply me, in my own unique way. So, I forged my own destiny. I made a crucial discovery. Beauty commanded attention. Not academic excellence or remarkable achievements, but pure, magnetic allure. By my teenage years, I recognized that physical appearance wielded unprecedented power. A calculated hair toss, a perfectly timed glance, a subtle curve of my lips. I could command anyone's attention and, more crucially, manipulate their actions to my advantage. At 19, I launched my social media empire on Instagram. Initially, I shared mundane snapshots, daily fashion choices, artistically arranged coffee cups, and the glittering facades of Manhattan. Soon, I grasped that perfection was marketable. I mastered the art of posing, perfected the natural beauty makeup technique. I became an expert at crafting an illusion of luxury online while actually residing in my parents' cramped apartment. Each like, every complimentary remark, every word of adoration beneath my posts, it became an addiction I couldn't resist. My parents dismissed my career choice as frivolous. In their eyes, I was squandering opportunities, failing to pursue meaningful endeavors. Yet I was generating substantial income. Upon reaching 100,000 followers, a single sponsored post earned me $5,000. With 500,000 followers came exclusive event invitations and premium brand collaborations. I had finally emerged from Juanita's overwhelming shadow. I had become somebody. Then Franklin entered my life. Franklin embodied everything I dreamed of in a husband: attractive, sophisticated, charismatic, and crucially, an ambitious entrepreneur. He spoke passionately about his startup ventures, his visionary million-dollar schemes, and our potential to become social media's next power couple. I placed my complete trust in Franklin. I believed he held the key to my dream future, one filled with exotic Bora Bora getaways, exclusive dining experiences at Michelin-starred establishments, and custom-designed couture pieces. I didn't need Juanita's intellectual capabilities. I simply needed to choose the right partner, and everything would fall into place. And then, beneath a picturesque Central Park sunset, Franklin dropped to one knee, presenting a dazzling engagement ring. I had anticipated this moment for what felt like eternity. I was on the brink of becoming a successful entrepreneur's wife. My dream wedding was within reach. I only needed one final piece to complete my perfect picture, the financial means to bring it all to life. The harsh reality was, I fell short. Though Instagram had provided me with income, maintaining my lavish online persona drained my resources. The expenses were endless: professional stylists, upscale restaurants, designer wardrobes that couldn't be recycled too frequently on social media. My bank balance showed just over $20,000, nowhere near sufficient for the caliber of wedding venue my status demanded. But Juanita had wealth. My sister, a prosperous CEO, owned several premier event planning companies across New York. Her financial abundance exceeded her needs. Most crucially, I was aware of Juanita's college savings account. $100,000. In my mind, it wasn't theft. I convinced myself I was claiming what rightfully belonged to me. Being her sister entitled me to a share of her perfect existence. If Juanita possessed everything, surely there was no harm in borrowing a small fraction of her wealth to create my dream wedding. The consequences never crossed my mind. I was consumed by visions of myself gliding down the aisle, basking in envious glances, camera flashes illuminating my path. Finally, I would claim the spotlight in our family. Finally, I would shed the label of being Juanita's shadow. Little did I realize I was walking straight into a snare. The thought of theft never occurred to me. Viewing Juanita's account balance, those endless figures, left me completely unburdened by guilt. $100,000. While merely a portion of my sister's fortune, it represented everything to me. It was my fantasy, my opportunity to prove my worth to the world, to earn the admiration I craved. Secrecy was never my intention. From the start, I confided in Mom, knowing she would support me, as always. "Mom, I need wedding funds," I announced one late afternoon in our living room. She glanced up from her tea, her brow furrowed. "We've invested all our savings in the down payment. You know about your father's company situation." I interrupted her. "I understand. I'm referring to Juanita's money." Her reaction, though hesitant, wasn't surprised. I understood her thoughts. Juanita had always been too successful, too self-sufficient, too detached from our family. Though never openly discussed between my mother and me, we shared an understanding Juanita was like an outsider in our family home. I clasped her hand. "She has excess wealth. She won't even realize." While Mom didn't immediately agree, she offered no resistance. I recognized my victory. The following day, Mom and I visited the bank. "We need to withdraw some money from my daughter's account," my mother announced to the teller, her voice steady. I'm a co-owner of the account. I maintained my innocent facade, playing the role of an excited bride-to-be accompanying her mother for wedding preparations. The deception was flawless. No one could see through our charade. The transaction proceeded with unexpected ease. A simple signature, a quick card swipe, and suddenly, Juanita's $100,000 was in my possession. The sensation was peculiar. Guilt was notably absent. No moral qualms plagued my conscience. Instead, I felt vindicated. Memories flooded my mind, Countless occasions where Juanita monopolized our parents' pride. Every dinner conversation centered around her accomplishments. Juanita's latest promotion, Juanita's new property acquisition, Juanita, our crowning achievement. Each instance where I was measured against her standards, perpetually cast as the inferior version of my sister. This time, I was reclaiming my share of equality. This wasn't reckless spending. This was strategic investment. The funds secured my deposit at the Belmont Royale, New York's most distinguished wedding venue. A conventional church ceremony wouldn't suffice. An ordinary hotel reception was beneath me. I required a setting that reflected my status, my lifestyle, my destined position. The Belmont Royale embodied everything I sought. Upon entering the magnificent hall, I felt an immediate sense of belonging. The majestic ceiling stretched toward infinity, illuminated by sparkling crystal chandeliers. Elegant tables adorned with immaculate white linen stretched endlessly, while the subtle fragrance of premium wines permeated the atmosphere. Every detail was immaculate. Every element spoke of luxury. I signed the contract without hesitation. Why scrutinize details when money could resolve any concern? The $50,000 deposit transaction felt as casual as purchasing designer accessories. I arranged a consultation with management to explore their elite wedding package. My requirements were extensive: a sophisticated 7-course menu, spectacular fireworks display, ornate chocolate fountain, and a custom Parisian wedding gown. Nothing was excessive. Everything was deserved. Departing the venue, I composed a message to Juanita. This money's insignificant to you anyway. Just borrowing a bit. Love you lots. Her delayed response was typical of her cold demeanor. Several hours passed before my phone vibrated. Juanita's name illuminated the screen. I answered, preparing myself for the inevitable lecture about financial responsibility and ethical behavior. Instead, she delivered a single statement, one that sent shivers through my body despite the scorching New York heat. Have a wonderful day, Elvira. No rage. No confrontation. None of the reactions I had anticipated. Just an unsettling, spine-chilling serenity. I couldn't comprehend why my pulse was racing so violently. I had emerged victorious. Or had I? I possessed a strategy. A straightforward plan. Nothing could conceivably backfire. I had secured the venue with the deposit, endorsed the agreement, and detailed everything essential for my perfect wedding. Only one final hurdle remained: clearing the outstanding balance. 2 months before the wedding date, the event coordinator at the Belmont Royale sent me a notification stating that the remaining sum of $50,000 had to be cleared within 7 days. A courteous, businesslike message, but I detected the underlying ultimatum. I remained unperturbed. My parents would devise a solution. Franklin would handle it. We had sufficient time. However, upon arriving home, my father's usual warm smile was conspicuously absent. He was seated on the sofa, fingers interlocked. My mother stood behind him, her gaze fixed downward. My entrance went unacknowledged. My chest tightened momentarily. Dad? I positioned myself opposite them. Is something wrong? My father exhaled deeply. Elvira. I exhausted every option. But the business is facing severe difficulties. Your wedding. I arched my eyebrow. Dad, please don't stress. Most expenses are covered. We just need to handle the remainder. He gestured negatively. We lack the funds for the final payment. I remained motionless. That's not possible. I forced a chuckle, but it sounded hollow. You're surely jesting? We've already invested substantially. We can't abandon everything now. My mother attempted to grasp my hand, but I recoiled. Her concerned expression was something I refused to acknowledge. Dad, I require that money. My tone was icy. The Belmont Royale isn't negotiable. This transcends a mere wedding. It's about my professional future, my social standing. My father's grip tightened visibly. Elvira, can't you grasp the situation? We're financially drained. The company faces bankruptcy. Your mother and I depleted our entire savings just to cover your deposit. I shook my head, maintaining a forced smile. It's manageable. We can secure a loan. You have business contacts. My father's expression revealed something I'd never witnessed before: absolute powerlessness. No one will extend credit to me anymore, Elvira. An icy sensation crept along my vertebrae. I turned toward my mother. Mom? Surely you can resolve this. She hesitated, biting her lip. Elvira, perhaps it's time to consider scaling back the wedding plans. Maybe you and Franklin could. I slammed my palm against the table, causing both of them to startle. Absolutely not. I refused to have anything less than perfect. A heavy silence descended upon the room. My parents gazed at me as though I were a stranger before them. With a dismissive scoff, I rose and retrieved my phone. If they wouldn't assist me, I knew exactly who would. I dialed Juanita's number. Sister, I need your assistance. Oh! Her voice maintained its characteristic composure. Would you consider lending me some money? I adopted my sweetest tone. You have more than enough. I just need a bit to complete the wedding payments. Juanita remained quiet for a moment. Then came her response, no. I clutched my phone tighter, fury building within me. No? What exactly do you mean by no? You have surplus funds. Why won't you help? That's not my obligation. Her voice remained maddeningly steady. I barely resisted hurling my phone at the nearest wall. You're being selfish. Can't you understand how crucial this wedding is to me? I exploded. Have you ever considered my feelings? Juanita released a gentle laugh. Oh, Elvira, I always have. The issue is, you've never considered mine. The line went dead. I stood frozen, my heart racing, my chest constricting. For the first time ever, genuine fear gripped me. I couldn't let this wedding slip away. I couldn't lose everything I'd constructed. Without this lavish celebration, who would I be? Just then, my phone vibrated. An email notification from the Belmont Royale appeared. The proprietor requested a meeting with my family and me tomorrow to discuss our financial arrangements. An ominous sensation settled over me. A deeply unsettling feeling. I entered the Belmont Royale, maintaining a proud posture and steady stride, despite my wildly beating heart. My mother walked alongside me, nervously fidgeting with her hands. My father, appearing a decade older and thoroughly exhausted, maintained his silence. Franklin? He'd messaged about an important meeting preventing his attendance. I wasn't shocked, but I desperately needed his presence. I needed an ally because I sensed everything was about to unravel. As the meeting room door swung open, I plastered on my most brilliant smile, feigning complete control. A brunette woman in an impeccable black suit stood there, clutching a folder. Sarah, my assigned event manager, greeted me with professional courtesy, though something seemed amiss in her expression. Opposite her sat an empty chair. The owner's seat. My heart thundered as I realized they hadn't arrived yet. I lowered myself into the chair, folding my arms across my chest, attempting to project composure despite my clammy palms. Sarah opened her laptop and addressed us in a measured, professional voice. The Jacobs family were meeting today regarding the outstanding balance for the wedding. As previously discussed, the $50,000 payment must be settled within 24 hours. Failure to do so will result in contract termination, and the deposit will be forfeited. My mother bobbed her head anxiously. We understand, however. One moment, I cut in, trying to seize control. We'd like to speak with the proprietor. Surely we can reach an agreement. Sarah offered a slight, knowing smile. Certainly. The owner will join us momentarily. The door creaked open, and my blood ran cold. It wasn't some wealthy businessman. It wasn't an elderly investor. It was Juanita, my sister. The room began to spin violently. I struggled for air. My mind went completely blank. Juanita entered, wearing an expertly tailored gray suit, her hair pulled back in an elegant, authoritative bun, her eyes piercing and unforgiving. This had to be some cruel nightmare. Hello, Elvira. Her tone was unnervingly steady. I understand you wish to discuss payment terms? Words failed me. I watched my mother's jaw drop. My father's knuckles whitened as he gripped his chair. Juanita was the Belmont Royale's owner. No. Impossible. No. Sarah rose, yielding her place to Juanita, then silently departed, leaving me, my parents, and the one person I never expected to betray me. I forced down the lump in my throat, struggling to keep my voice level. What sort of twisted game is this? Juanita settled into her chair, crossing her legs elegantly. This isn't a game. I acquired the Belmont Royale 4 years ago. And now, you're facing quite the predicament. My mother shook her head repeatedly, like someone desperate to wake up. Juanita, why didn't you ever tell us? Because no one bothered to ask. Juanita's shoulders lifted in a casual shrug. I spent 10 years building my success, but not once did anyone notice. Elvira's shadow always loomed larger. So I stopped sharing. My fingers curled into fists. You orchestrated this whole thing. Juanita's eyes met mine, crackling with intensity. Orchestrated? No, Elvira. You created this mess entirely on your own. Her words stung like a physical blow. This can't be happening. My composure cracked, my voice trembling. You couldn't have simply watched me place the deposit without saying anything. You deliberately let this happen. You knew all along, didn't you? Juanita nodded slowly. Yes. And would you like to know why I allowed it to continue? I swallowed the rising knot in my throat. She reclined in her chair, her voice barely above a whisper, but sharp enough to cut. Because you've never had to face real consequences, Elvira. Throughout your life, Mom has been there to clean up your disasters. Dad has always covered your mistakes with his checkbook. And this time, you assumed it would play out the same way. My mother's lips quivered as tears welled in her eyes. Juanita's gaze bore into me. But this is my establishment. This is my property. And you believed that simply being my sister entitled you to take whatever you desired. The dam inside me broke. I leaped from my chair, my voice cracking as I screamed. Why have you always despised me? Why have you never allowed me anything? You possess everything. You've achieved success. You have wealth. You wield influence. You're living the life I never got to experience. A deafening silence engulfed the room. Juanita maintained her composure, but something flickered in her eyes, a glimpse of deep-seated hurt. My father bowed his head, releasing a heavy sigh. My mother's sobs echoed through the space. And finally, I saw it. For the first time in my existence, reality struck me. I wasn't the wronged party. I had never been the victim in this story. I was the aggressor, constantly pushing Juanita into obscurity, blind to the pain I'd inflicted upon her. Juanita rose, delivering the final blow with one sentence. The contract is terminated. The $50,000 deposit will be retained. My mother gasped audibly. But that was Juanita's money. My sister turned, fixing her gaze directly on me. No, Mom. Her voice floated like a feather. That was the money Elvira squandered. I slumped back into my chair, rendered speechless. My carefully constructed world was disintegrating. No one would come to my rescue. No one stood in my corner. No one would shield me from the consequences of my actions. Everything was lost. No wedding. No finances. No supporters. After that devastating meeting, I drifted through New York streets like a phantom. I avoided going home. I ignored Franklin's attempts to reach me. I stayed away from social media. I just walked, my feet blistering in my expensive heels, yet I felt nothing. One question echoed relentlessly in my mind. What have I done? I was lost without my usual safety nets. I had grown accustomed to having everything arranged for me, Mom handling problems, Dad covering expenses, Franklin offering reassurance, and my followers providing endless validation. But now I stood alone. Several days later, I returned home. My father still couldn't meet my gaze. He appeared more aged, his eyes hollow, his hair noticeably grayer. My mother remained unchanged. But this time, she didn't rush to embrace me as she always had before. What are your plans moving forward? She inquired, her warmth completely vanished. I lifted my gaze to meet hers, and for the first time, I noticed her eyes weren't filled with their usual maternal affection. Instead, they reflected pure weariness. I'm not sure, I managed to whisper. Mom, Dad, can't you help me somehow? My father released a laugh, a sound so devoid of emotion, so unlike him, it made me shiver. No, Elvira, we cannot. I remained motionless. He exhaled heavily. I reached out to Juanita. My insides twisted. What was her response? My mother stepped in. She believes she's extended enough help. It's time for you to stand on your own feet. I attempted to speak, but words failed me. Deep down, I knew Juanita spoke the truth. My entire existence had been built on a sense of entitlement, believing that tears and tantrums would always restore what I'd lost. But now, no one was there to sweep away my mistakes. For the first time ever, I had to face the consequences. Finding employment was my only option. 7 days later, I found myself stationed behind the register at a modest coffee shop, directly opposite the Belmont Royale. I donned a black apron. My once pristine nails, previously maintained at Manhattan's finest salons, were now brittle and peeling. Daily, I had a clear view of my dream wedding venue from across the street. Each day, I served beverages to people who mirrored my former self, sophisticated women in luxury attire, absorbed in their phones, laughing, barely acknowledging my existence. I used to be one of them. Now, I was merely background noise. After my first shift, I huddled in the cafe storage area, my spine against the cold wall, my feet throbbing, fighting back tears. I checked my phone. No word from Franklin. No calls from Mom. Complete silence. I opened Instagram. Countless messages from supposed friends, but none showing genuine concern. They only saw details about the failed wedding. They craved drama, scandal, gossip fodder. Not one truly cared about my well-being. I removed the app. For the first time, I experienced true solitude. 3 months later, the cafe work had become routine. I'd mastered handling difficult customers and maintaining composure when treated poorly. My appearance had transformed. Sneakers replaced heels, ponytails replaced styled hair, 8-hour shifts replaced leisure time, anonymity replaced recognition. Surprisingly, I found peace in this new reality. The desperate need for attention had faded. For the first time in my life, I was free from the burden of proving my worth to others. One afternoon, while wiping down a table, I noticed a newlywed couple entering the Belmont Royale. The bride glowed with happiness, the groom beamed with joy. Everyone's attention was drawn to them. They were living the dream I once desperately chased. But this time, envy didn't consume me. Instead, I felt at peace. A voice I knew well broke through my reverie. Elvira. I spun around. There stood my father. His eyes held something I'd never seen before. Dad. I stammered. Why are you here? He moved closer, placing an envelope on the freshly cleaned table. Your first paycheck. Your mother wanted me to deliver it personally. I glanced at it. The amount was modest, but it represented something profound. My first independently earned income. Words escaped me. My father exhaled softly, then rested his hand on my shoulder. I'm proud of you. I stood motionless. My father, expressing pride in me? I attempted to respond, but emotion overwhelmed me, constricting my voice. He squeezed my shoulder gently before turning away, leaving me there clutching my small, yet significant, paycheck. I was no longer Elvira Jacobs, the would-be bride of the Belmont Royale. The Instagram sensation everyone once idolized had vanished. I used to be Elvira Jacobs, social media royalty, a girl who seemed to have everything, the object of universal envy. Now, I'm just another cafe waitress, earning hourly wages, nursing sore muscles, sporting broken nails, devoid of designer clothes, with no one calling me their queen anymore. Everyone has abandoned me. Franklin vanished immediately after the wedding's cancellation, without even a farewell. Later, I discovered him on Instagram with someone new, younger, richer, more socially valuable than myself. My friends evaporated too. Not one message checking on my well-being. The same people who once worshipped me had simply moved on to praising their next idol. My followers steadily decreased. I'd become irrelevant. Who had I become? One evening, after completing my shift and stepping outside the cafe, my phone rang. Juanita's name appeared on the screen. I paused before accepting the call. How are you holding up? Her tone had lost its former edge. I inhaled deeply. I'm okay. The line went quiet. Then she spoke, Mom and Dad want you to join us for Sunday dinner." I remained silent. The thought of returning, facing her, my parents, confronting my past actions, seemed overwhelming. I wasn't sure I could even face my own reflection. Yet I recognized I couldn't run forever. "I'll consider it." That was all I could manage. I hung up, standing in the crisp evening air, experiencing an unfamiliar sensation, a delicate glimmer of possibility. 1 week later, my first paycheck arrived. The amount was modest, sufficient only for monthly rent and basic groceries. Yet, as I examined those figures, I felt something unprecedented: absence of shame. This money was my own achievement, not a handout from my parents, not Juanita's assistance, not earnings from curating a perfect Instagram presence. I had earned every cent, through hours of standing, through handling challenging customers, through cleaning duties, through service. Never had I imagined a paycheck could stir such emotions. As I held it, tears threatened to fall, because I realized, for the first time ever, I was standing on my own feet. Uncertainty still lingers. I'm not convinced I can completely transform myself. The allure of luxury remains. Glimpses of women in designer wear still awaken that old yearning to return to my previous life. But I've come to understand that path is closed now. Perhaps that's exactly what I needed. If you've stayed with my story until now, has your judgment softened? Do you still view me as someone deserving punishment for their misdeeds? Or can you see me as a product of our society's making? I'm not unique. Countless others exist, individuals living for validation, crafting flawless facades while feeling hollow inside, unable to recognize themselves without public attention. You might judge them. You might harbor contempt. But consider this. In their position, would your choices differ? Share your thoughts below. Should Elvira face consequences for her actions? Or is she merely another casualty of our times, like countless others? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like mine. Because someday, you might find yourself with a similar tale to share.